All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I know some people are sort of trickling in, but I want to make sure that we don't take up too much of your Thursdays. So hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Maddie Dix. I'm the alumni coordinator for the School of Nursing, and I'm very excited to welcome you to this special Black History Month programming, Being Black in Nursing. I wanted to quickly just go over a few things about Zoom webinar and the event details a little bit before I turn things over to our presenters. You'll notice that your cameras are off and you are muted, but you do have access to the Q&A and the chat function. So if at any point during the presentations, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in there, and I will moderate after all of the presentations are over. This meeting is also being recorded so that we can share with people who were not able to join us today for whatever reason. And so, yeah, so now I have the honor to turn things over to Dean Dunbar-Jacob, who will introduce our three presenters.
Good afternoon, and thank you very, very much for joining us today for an exciting and very special program honoring Black History Month, and more specifically, honoring the nurses who have paved the way and are continuing to make outstanding contributions to the profession. At the School of Nursing, 3 Black women cleared the way for future generations of nurses in 1943. Adina Johnson Davis, Nadine Fry, and Rachel Poole, who, by the way, was my director of nursing in my very first job in nursing, were the first Black women to be admitted into Pitt's nursing program. The trio broke the color barrier for nursing in Pittsburgh. And if it wasn't for these 3 trailblazers, diversity within the School of Nursing would not be what it is today. Today, we are celebrating 3 distinguished School of Nursing alums: Dr. Betty Braxter, Dr. Letitia Graves, and Dr. Dondra Jones. We're honored to have these 3 phenomenal African-American graduates with us today to celebrate their contributions, their experiences, and their success, and to hear their thoughts on the future of race in the nursing profession. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the presenters. First, we have Dr. Betty Braxter. Betty is the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education at the School of Nursing, an Associate Professor, and a Certified Nurse Midwife. She brings over 20 years of professional practice to the classroom. Betty is a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh School of Nursing, having earned her PhD in 2003, followed by a postdoctoral research position. As a faculty member, she conducts research on several interrelated topics, ranging from substance abuse among women, effectiveness of doulas in women's healthcare, to the mental health responsibilities and outcomes of having a parish nurse. Betty's research has helped her earn prestigious awards and recognitions, induction as a fellow into the American Academy of Nursing, one of the highest accolades in the nursing profession. She received the Chancellor's Distinguished Public Service Award for her work in dedicating her career to the care of disadvantaged girls and young women, the Nightingale Nurse Educator Award in Pennsylvania, the School of Nursing Cameos of Caring Nurse Educator Award, and the Dean's Distinguished Teaching Award. Dr. Braxter is a member of several distinguished organizations and committees, including the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Maternal Mortality Committee, the Leamington Community Services Advisory Board, the Gwen J. Elliott Institute Advisory Board, the Eva P. Mitchell Board of Directors, and the Strong Women, Strong Girls MEL Advisory Board. In addition, Betty volunteers for the Pittsburgh Action Against Rape headline, Miriam's High Tea, which works with women experiencing homelessness and addiction, Northside Urban Pathway School, which provides education and health activities for minority high school girls, and the Pittsburgh Public Schools mentoring program for 6th grade students. Betty is also a member of Sigma Theta Tau Eta chapter and co-chairs the Women's Health Across the Lifespan Committee for the National Black Nurses Association. As you may have noticed, Betty doesn't sleep. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Betty Braxter. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Letitia Graves. Letitia is an assistant professor at the University of Texas Medical Branch School of Nursing. She earned her PhD from the University of Pittsburgh School of Nursing in 2019, along with a minor in healthcare genetics. Letitia is an accomplished researcher with an interest in veterans' health and symptom science, with a specific focus on symptoms among individuals after spinal cord injury, epigenetics, and aging. Letitia is also interested in advancing nursing science through inter and interprofessional collaborations as a means of strengthening the research tradition from bench to bedside. Her work has been published in Science Direct and Sage journals. Her research has earned her esteemed honors, including the Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Research and Development, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Research Award in 2021, the 2021 Training and Grantsmanship for Rehabilitation Research sponsored by the Medical University of South Carolina, and a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation National Institute of Nursing Research Joint Postdoctoral Fellowship in 2019. Dr. Graves is a member of several distinguished organizations, including the American Nurses Association, American Spinal Cord Injury Association, Sigma Theta Tau, International Society of Nurses and Genetics, and the International Spinal Cord Society. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Letitia Graves. And finally, I'd like to introduce Dr. Dondra Jones. Dondra has been with UPMC Health System for over 30 years, working in multiple positions spanning staff nurse to various nursing leadership and executive positions. In May 2021, she was appointed Vice President of Patient Care Services and Chief Nursing Officer at UPMC Magee Women's Hospital. She had previously been the Chief Nursing Officer and Vice President of Patient Care Services at UPMC East and UPMC McKeesport Hospitals, where, by the way, under her, the hospitals won significant awards for their community service activities. She is a national conference speaker on various topics, including nurse manager's scope and span of control, diversity and inclusion, and various professional development and advancement strategies. Dondra is a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh School of Nursing, having earned her Doctor of Nursing Practice degree in Nursing Administration with a minor in Nursing Informatics. Dondra holds a Nurse Executive Advanced certification from the American Nurses Credentialing Center. Dr. Jones serves on numerous committees and maintains significant leadership roles. She is a member of the FDA Peripheral and Central Nervous System Advisory Committee, the Pennsylvania Action Coalition's Nursing Diversity Council, the UPMC Board of Inclusion and Diversity Committee, the American Organization of Nurse Leaders, and the American Nurses Association. She also serves on several board of directors for various organizations. She is the immediate past president of the Pittsburgh Black Nurses in Action, the local chapter of the National Black Nurses Association, and is a founder and the program director of the Pittsburgh Black Nurses Association Future Nurses Academy, a mentorship program for diverse nursing students attending nursing programs within the greater Pittsburgh area. Dr. Jones has received numerous awards, including recipient of the Pennsylvania Nightingale Award in the CNO executive category. She was ranked 23rd by Talk Magazine's 100 Most Influential African American Pennsylvanians In 2019, she was recognized by the Pittsburgh Courier with a Woman of Excellence Award and by Pittsburgh Magazine with the Nursing Excellence and Leadership Award. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dondra Jones. And now I'm going to turn the camera and the microphone over to Dr. Betty Braxter.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Dean Dunbar Jacobs, for that lovely introduction. I was told by Maddie Dix that there were 77 people, so I'm just going to speak to 7 of the 77, okay? Let me just share a bit about my journey, and it's an interesting journey. I always enjoyed science, and I was intrigued by science, and I was the person in the home who was trying to incubate babies, getting the eggs and trying to incubate them to grow into little baby chicks. So I've always had that inclination to understanding the mechanisms associated with X and Y and the outcomes associated with X and Y. So moving forward, when I entered a university setting, I wasn't really quite sold on nursing. I enjoyed interactions with individuals, but I wasn't quite sold on what's nursing for me. That solidified in my initial advent into the maternal health space. And that advent was interesting. It was in Charity Hospital in Louisiana, New Orleans, by the way. And I was a junior level student. I was in with probably an intern, and we had a birthing person who happened to be African American. It could have been anyone else. And the pregnant woman was very good about controlling her labor. It was the healthcare providers, including myself, who were not quite at the best at that time. I remember the intern trying to put on gloves, trying to put on a gown, and kind of fumbling through that. So at the end of that event, I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way that we can, in one of the most eventful aspects of one life, having a baby is less chaotic and it's more of a transition. So I really felt like I needed to be within that arena. It wasn't called the maternal health space then. It was called labor and delivery. I needed to work with those kind of patients. And I was fortunate to do that at a point. But initially I was in an NICU, which is a wonderful place for understanding the outcomes of poor health, because it's the health of the mother that leads to outcomes that where babies are on respirators or having respiratory difficulties. So it really galvanizes you to move to improve maternal health. Did that for a couple of years, was fortunate and blessed to then go to midwifery school and did that. Went to Dallas and then did more labor and delivery and maternal health kind of activities, and was fortunate at that time, after leaving the Dallas area, was fortunate to return to my home city in Louisiana and do more within the maternal health space. Popped around Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, and that part of the world. And then had an opportunity to go out of the country and work out of the country to see the differences between our healthcare system and another country's healthcare system, which is always interesting to look back on the country when you're outside of it. Gives you a different perspective. But all over the world, the issue of maternal health is so important. Any birthing person in any of the countries I've ever been in, when they know you're a nurse or healthcare provider and they're pregnant, their question, even though you may not understand the language, is how am I doing and how am my baby doing? So that's a common human response. So it's something special about being in the maternal health space that really attracts one to really improving health of all, particularly birthing persons, because everything is couched within that mother to provide support for the baby growing inside the uterus. So it's been an exciting journey. I'm always, I think one of the questions was, what are your primary accomplishments? Well, I think, galvanizing actions around improving maternal health with the National Black Nurses Association, having that become a focal point, where just this morning I was reading an article, and it was from the Department of Health and Human Services, that more than 800 women died in 2020 as a result of maternal health issues. And we, bop around the idea of 2 women every day die as a result of pregnancy-related conditions. And many of the women are African American. There's got to be a way that we can deal with that. Many things are in place now. They're just beginning, but we have to, for the citizenry of the country, we have to improve maternal health for everyone, particularly Black women. And the other accomplishment, and this comes from a family background, is when I'm involved in taking care and been fortunate and guided in terms of management, being the person to make the decisions as it relates to the care of birthing persons. And in that management and making the decision, when that mom is healthy and the baby is healthy, that to me is a personal accomplishment. I'm guided and directed in that respect, but that to me is an accomplishment in and of itself. Finally, to look at the future, and I'm sure we're going to talk about barriers. I think the future within nursing is mixed. There is a very bright side that there's so many different opportunities, so many technologies, so many bright people who will lead us in an area and in avenues we have not really thought about at this point. And we'll explore areas that are just beginning to emerge for us to really focus on to improve the health of everyone. On the flip side, we're seeing an emergence of that, perhaps looking at social media, the reduction in trust the society has had in nursing in terms of misinformation. No longer, particularly as it relates to this pandemic, no longer are we seeing patients come in, some patients, and not having some kind of interesting dialogue between the patient and the nurse. So that's a challenge. How do we equip nurses of the 21st and 22nd century? Because this misinformation debate is not going away, unfortunately. To be resilient and to rebut misinformation while maintaining respect and autonomy of that patient. That's going to be challenging as we move forward. But there are very bright nurses. I see them every day. They are in the School of Nursing. They have intriguing thoughts that I would not have even thought about. And they are up to the task. And that is the role of a nursing school, to have to push forward leaders and to prepare them for challenges. And so that's part of my story. I'm a Southern girl. I could go on, but I have other people, other colleagues that I want to also have them share their stories. So I think I'm turning it over to Dr. Graves.
Thank you, Dr. Braxter. It's, as I listen to your story, I think my journey kind of started in a different direction, where I always wanted to be in healthcare and didn't really think of the science part of it. It was more of the taking care of people. Let me put a Band-Aid on you. I used to carry around the little nurse bag or the medical bag, and I would give people shots in the house and some of those kinds of things. So I always knew that I wanted to be in healthcare. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, a medical doctor. And then I got an opportunity to do a shadowing, and I realized the nurse was the person who knew it all. She was at the center of everything. She coordinated all the care. She was just something that I wanted to know more about. I really didn't know. And so then I had an opportunity to get my certified nursing assistance certification through vocational education while I was in high school. And so that started my journey. And I really enjoyed being able to work with patients. Went to undergrad, did my BSN, and got into critical care, which I thought was, going to be the be all end all for me, because I really liked that setting. And the one thing that I noticed across all of my experiences, whether it was surgical intensive care, like a trauma overflow, a step down unit, all of those kind of specialized care places, I tend to gravitate to the patients that were neuro impaired, whether it was traumatic brain injury, whether they had spinal cord injuries. And I really wanted to know more about what was happening with them. And over time, I'll say that was exciting for like the first 5 years. And then I realized, like, I really would like to know what happens to them after they leave us. Like, we have them for this amount of time to get them back stable, but then what is the next step? And so I found myself in the Veterans Hospital. I was at the VA in Houston, the Michael E. DeBakey VA Medical Center, and I was in the spinal cord injury care line there. Started at the bedside. I had no real specialized spinal cord injury experience, and I didn't even realize that it was a specialty. And once I got there and I started working with the veterans and learning about SCI care, I was just like, this is where I'm always supposed to have been. And it was funny because in undergrad, everyone always said, oh, you'll find your niche, and while I liked what I was doing, this is where I feel like I really thrived. I got the opportunity to see them during the rehab phase. So I had already seen them in the acute phase of their recovery, but then I got to see them over time as they rehabbed, and then moving into case management, where I was able to help them transition back into the community, going in their homes and figuring out some of those more social determinant kind of things, what their needs were. And from there, I went into teaching. I got my master's in education, and I hadn't really thought about getting a PhD in nursing. So somehow I came across a program through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and it was kind of to help me decide if that was what I wanted to do next steps. And so through meeting some of the mentors in that program, I realized, okay, I would like to think about doing this PhD and moving more towards building and contributing to the science, because I definitely had questions. I wanted to know why some of my veterans have, pressure injuries when they do all of the right things. They do their pressure relief, they eat the right foods, they do all of the things that we tell them to do, but they still develop these pressure injuries that are, life-altering as well, on top of their already life-altering condition, and why some of them would have severe spasticity or extreme pain, and then others didn't. So that is kind of what led me down this path that I'm on now. Not even knowing that nurses really did research in this way. I wish that I would have been exposed to the research complex early on, because then I feel like I could have got a jump on some things. But I also think too that having this clinical experience behind me really helped to shape how I approach science in this space. So my journey is still very much in its development. So I'm really excited about where the field is going. Excited to see more people embracing research from a nursing perspective, because I think we have a very unique lens. And even thinking about how I incorporated the genomics into that. had no idea that nurses were doing research in a genetic space or a genomic space, and how that we could use that to leverage our understanding of health risks and contributing to interventions that will reduce poor outcomes. So that's a little bit of my journey. Like I said, I think my journey is still commencing, but it is an exciting time to be a nurse. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Jones.
Well, thank you, Dr. Graves. And I first have to say what an honor it is to be with Dr. Braxter and Dr. Graves, because I truly know them as Letitia and Betty, and we truly are a sisterhood and have partnered together on various initiatives and various projects through Pittsburgh Black Nurses in Action, who have truly brought us together. And I've learned from both of them. So I have to say thank you for that. But my journey and my story, really starts back years ago as a child and growing up in Pittsburgh in a single parent household and poor. And my mother was a 40-year career nursing assistant. And seeing her each and every day and what she would do in going to care for individuals. And then my great-grandmother had a stroke. And since my mom was, single and had kids, the family decided that that's where grandma would live with us. And so post-stroke, my great-grandmother came to live with us. And so at an early young age, I learned how to care for people. But I also watched all of the nursing support staff that came into our home and the home care nurses, and really started to learn about healthcare and thinking, this is what I want to do when I grow up. But as I said, it wasn't an easy journey. When you think about nursing school and getting into college and all of those things that are needed, right? I then said, wow, maybe I want to be a doctor, right? And that wasn't easy either. And I went to college and did a few different places. I actually went to Pitt for a minute, and then I went somewhere else. And then it was like, okay, what am I going to do here? My mom's like, you need to get focused. And an interesting thing is I started as a diploma grad in nursing because my neighbor, Mrs. Cisco, I'll never forget, was the admission clerk to West Penn Hospital School of Nursing. And she's like, you always said you wanted to be a nurse, so why don't you just try it out? So I figured, let me do that. And boy, was it one of the best things that I've ever done. But the other part of this story was when I got my list of books, I'm like, okay, I got it accepted into the program. I have everything now, but now I don't have the money for my books. And so I actually met some individuals, which at that time, the city of Pittsburgh had gotten together and created the Nursing Recruitment Coalition. And that was a coalition of various healthcare organizations in Pittsburgh working together for a common goal of having more diverse individuals in healthcare and in nursing, in the nursing field. They had individualized plans. So you would go and talk to them and they would see what they could do to support you. So they bought my books. And that's when I met Kathy Mail and others here in Pittsburgh that helped me and mentored me in becoming a nurse and getting through nursing school. And I was one of the first graduates of the Nurse Recruitment Coalition. But I had the great opportunity once getting through nursing school of starting my career at Shadyside Hospital. And I started my career, I think, at the most wonderful time because our CNO at that time was Gail Wolf, who was attached to the university, as well as my unit director was Peggy Hayden, who's a graduate from the university as well. And so I learned about a lot of great leadership. And Peggy really, as my unit director, believed in me. And as I would have challenging situations, she would talk to me and guide me and really had me starting to think about leadership. But I remember one incident as a staff nurse and on orientation that still sticks with me today. I walk into the patient's room, my uniform all starched and ready, stethoscope around my neck, feeling really confident. And I knock on the door and I'm still with a preceptor and we walk into the room and the patient looks at me and says, "Oh, honey, you could take my tray." And then turns to my preceptor, who was a Caucasian nurse, and starts talking to her about, his care. and kind of dismissed me. Boy, did I feel deflated. But I picked myself up and I said, okay, it's all about how you handle this situation right here and right now. So I said to that patient, sir, I would be happy to take your tray, but first let me introduce myself. And then I introduced myself as his nurse for today. And he paused and we carried on and I was able to provide that care. But when I left that room, my preceptor never spoke about the event and didn't talk to me about how I was feeling when that happened. And so I kept that with me forever because I still tell that story today. But through all that I've been and working with UPMC for all of these years, you know, I've been able to really work with some really great leaders. And as I said, Gail Wolf and Peggy Hayton, who were there at my foundation, really believed in me and gave me projects and things to do, and it really encouraged me and gave me that confidence as an African-American nurse, because remember, in the beginning, I was feeling like, okay, now I know I'm different, right? But then as I continued to grow and get into various opportunities, and I've been in various roles and unit director positions. As my first unit director position, I also remember going and meeting a patient, and we would have to go and introduce ourselves, and you have to go into your nurse leader rounds and tell the patients who you are and what your role is. And I told them I was the nurse manager, and this time it was an African-American older male. And we were in a dining room situation because I was at the rehab hospital, and he said, "You mean you're in charge of this department?" And I said, "Yes, sir. And all of these people report to you?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, he started cheering that the Black girl's in charge, the Black girl's in charge. And he couldn't believe that I was in that role. And so that's when I realized that being a nurse and being African-American in that role also made a positive difference to people who looked like me. And so I said I needed to continue that journey and making sure that I can make a positive impact on individuals. So as UPMC is such a large organization, opportunities come up, and I would put myself out there and take risks. When they asked me about, hey, Dondra, we're thinking about starting this mentorship program within UPMC and was wondering if you would be interested in helping to lead that, I took that opportunity because I realized that, as I shared with you, the Nurse Recruitment Coalition was the opportunity, a mentorship program that helped me through nursing school, and now I could give that back. So at that time, we launched the Minority Nurse Mentorship Program, as we called it then, for new nurses coming into UPMC. I remember the very first event, and the nurse who I still speak to today, she stood up at the event and looked around and saw all these other nurses of color in the room and said to us, "Where have you been? I don't see you," because I don't see people who look like me in a role of being a nurse. That instilled in me, we still have so much work to do. So I committed that I wanted to continue to grow in that leadership world, to be able to touch so many other nurses and nurses of color and other nurses and patients, to be able to make that positive difference in their life. I think that is part of my passion and what the Lord brought me here to do. And as I shared with you, I was a diploma grad, so I knew I had to go back to school. And I got my master's degree and kept on going. And then I remember one day talking to Dean Dunbar Jacobs and said, when I was working in the corporate area, and said, "I think I want to go back and get my doctorate, but can we do something? And can we work with UPMC?" And working with her and the university, and really a cohort of us really going back to get our doctorate degree. But at that time, I was working in the corporate area where I got to touch a lot of nursing. And I thought that's where I would probably stay. But I had a friend and colleague who said to me, "Okay, you're going back and you're getting your doctorate. What are you going to do with that?" And I said, "Well, I'm just going to grow up and be a role model. So, you know, the future nursing report said we need to double the number of doctorate degrees. And I want to be this authentic leader. So that's what I'm doing." And she challenged me and she said, "Dondra, you need to do something different. Not that you have to get a different job, but you need to think differently and do something different with that education." And so I thought about it and I said, I want to be a chief nursing officer, and that's what I would like to do. I remember talking to my boss. I started networking. I remember I met with Dr. Victoria Rich as well, because I was out at various conferences and putting myself out there and really getting that mentorship. And that's where I started to really join many different organizations. And I had already been with Pittsburgh Black Nurses, but then I started to take some leadership roles in Pittsburgh Black Nurses as well, and really saying, I want to make that positive difference for other people. I think one of those biggest accomplishments, though, for me is when we launched the Future Nurses Academy through Pittsburgh Black Nurses in Action, and really developed our own mentorship program for diverse nursing students in the greater Pittsburgh area. We're excited that we have given scholarships and mentorship to these nursing students. And today we have nurses who now will be back as our mentors this year. I'm very proud of that. My sister said to me, you know, Thondra, you're the Harriet Tubman of nurses. You have brought nurses with you and helped others to become that professional nurse. And I tell people each and every day, my nursing career has been more than I ever could have dreamed of, because I didn't know to dream it. But I think it was all about taking those risks, dealing with that uncomfortableness, and being very intentional in what those next steps are. So I'm excited to be on the journey that I'm on now here at McGee Women's Hospital and Maternal Health. And so, Dr. Braxter, I'm looking for your mentorship and guidance in all maternal health and all that you have been doing, because we can make a positive difference there. And we have to make that positive difference for the people who look like us, because we know that there's this disproportionate disparities that exist. And until those disparities go away, we have to be intentional and focused on providing exceptional care to those within hospitals, as well as within those in our communities. And I think that's the role of a nurse. And so with that, that's kind of my story and my journey. It's all been within UPMC, but boy, have I been in various positions and really taking those risks. And I have to say, through the mentorship and sponsorship of others who believed in me, has really helped me along this journey. So Maddie, I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. All of your stories and your journeys are so inspirational and so different. Like, you guys are just, you started in one place and are all in different places in the world now. And it's amazing to hear. And you guys are all very much mentors and role models to young nurses, and even those who aren't in the medical field like me. So I do have a couple of questions. If any of the participants have questions at all, please feel free to enter them in the chat. But you guys kind of talk about, I mean, we've talked about, where you started, how things are a little, like Betty, you were talking about taking care of your little chickens, and Letitia was giving out shots to everyone. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, whether that was, taking when you were walking around the kitchen giving people shots, or if it was when you were at school, what piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Well, I'll jump off. I was thinking about this. The advice would be, know who you are. Know your history, know your strengths, because don't let others define you. Have a sense of who you are. That may begin with your family, but know your history and know your goals. You identify your goals. Be very intentional in your goals. Be very candid with the strengths that you have, identify those, and also identify those that those areas that you need to grow in, and be responsive to criticism and take that in, but know yourself, know your beginnings, and know where you want to go. I think that's critical for any nurse, because there will be challenges, and no one accomplishes specific goals without help. It's not just individual. You need to have those support systems in place, and reach out to those support systems as you move forward.
And Maddie, if I could just add, when I think about that and I think about that question, one of the things that I'm still working on, right, is using inquiry instead of jumping to judgment. Because I think sometimes I think that this is why this has happened, and I feel like somebody was out to get me, but I didn't really ask that question first, right? Ask questions about it. And I feel like if I ask and find out that why, that then my response to it could be different. Because I was pretty strong-willed and had pretty strong communication. And I think especially being a Black nurse, you know, you want to not be perceived as this aggressive woman, right? Black female. And so really trying to use inquiry and not just judge, I think was one of those things, but still be the essence of me.
I think if I would give myself advice, and I think that kind of in summary of like what I'm hearing from Dr. Baxter and Dr. Jones, I would tell myself not to play small because, you know, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think sometimes we find ourselves in these spaces. I know for me being like I'm the first in my family to get a PhD. I oftentimes find myself as an only in spaces where it's only me as a Black nurse. And I'm an only Black nurse with a PhD. So it feels very strange sometimes. I don't even know the right word to say, but it just doesn't feel comfortable. That would be the word. So having these unique opportunities, you really are paving a way. You have an opportunity to influence people in ways that others might not. So use that to like show up authentically as yourself and help people to see that you're not aggressive because of how you look, you know. Give people things to talk about. You might find that you share more commonalities with people. You know, you might find yourself a collaborator, someone to work with. So I just think, you know, not being afraid to be in those spaces, being comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes is really important. So just don't play it small, be who you are, embrace what it is, and bring that forth because you never know how that is influencing. You never know who's watching. So that, and I would also tell myself not to take myself so seriously because sometimes you can do that too and, you know, lose yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to keep that like goofy, silly, like fun attitude, right? And every aspect of your life, right? Not just the professional side. Dr. Jones, this is more addressed to you, but your story about, you know, when you were in that, in the hospital, when you were your preceptor was just never addressed it, which is just, you were telling that and I was like, oh my gosh, what? Do you know whether it's in McGee or if it's just in the nursing school, are they preceptors, are they being trained to respond as allies to those sort of microaggressions that are experienced by nurses of color?
Yeah, so I can tell you here at McGee, we are being intentional. So I'm probably making people uncomfortable, but being intentional with our conversations, right? I want people to see that I am an African-American woman. And when people tell me, well, I don't see color, well, then you don't see me. And I want you to see that. And I want to be able to talk about that and to talk about my experience, right? From a patient's experience, an African-American patient experience, or a diverse individual, or it doesn't even have to be, you know, someone that is diverse or may feel like they are different. We need to talk about that and be intentional. So we are starting to have those conversations. We are having those conversations at UPMC, but I can tell you it's still not a comfort for everyone, right? I'm able to do it because I've been doing it a while and I try to help others to get comfortable with it. But I think we all have to start doing that and being very intentional. If not, we're never going to address these issues.
And Maddie, just to add to that, what Dr. Jones and Dondra is saying, nursing organizations, I know within midwifery, we are talking about preceptors. We're talking about trainings. We're also talking about if you want to be a preceptor, you have to meet this criteria or you will no longer be a preceptor. There are too many students who have to deal with microaggressions, and they leave nursing, and no one benefits. We have a mass exodus of nurses now for various reasons, and we need to retain every good nurse that we can. So no, it is coming to the forefront. If anything, COVID-19 has really shone the light on inequities. It's made everyone aware of those inequities that have long existed. I can only speak about my space. This is not the first time. Not within the past 15 years, the issue of maternal mortality has been a problem. And it only recently, since about 2018, has really come to the forefront of the nation. But that existed long before. And with COVID-19, I don't think we have, no longer can we say it does not exist. It is in front of us, and we have to deal with it. And I think young nurses will. We just need to provide the support that they move forward.
And if I could just add, that's why we have the Future Nurses Academy through Pittsburgh Black Nurses in Action, right? Because I can tell you, Maddie, that my preceptor at that time may not have ever recognized that that was an issue, right? And so as a young nurse, I didn't say to her, hey, this is how I'm feeling about this, right? But then I went home and told my mom, the people that I was comfortable with, right? And so that's why we've created the Future Nurses Academy, and we need organizations like that, because I can tell you, we hear stories from students and we hear how they feel and how they've been received, and we try to help them to process that, and also try to help them to have the words to say to individuals to let that be known, but in a professional way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to offer the support and the training. The information just needs to be available for everyone to be allies or to share their experiences. Absolutely. During your undergrads or in nursing, were there any classes that were like particularly hard for any of you? Did you guys, fail any of them? Maybe?
No, but I never liked ER, and that's interesting because anybody can walk through a labor and delivery. So it didn't make any sense. But I never liked, it's like, why can't they just, this type of condition come through? And now I'm in labor and, I'm working and I'm managing clients that at 2:00 in the morning, someone can say, well, I'm in labor. It's like, it's not that 9 to 5 that I thought it was.
Dean Dunbar Jacobs said you don't sleep, Betty. So
no, I really don't sleep, but I've always been a night owl. But no, nursing was interesting. The patient side was very interesting. All over the world, there are good people all over the world. And if one thing galvanizes people is birth. It's just joy to see another human being come in, and you've been a part of that experience. It's just a wonderful, wonderful event. So no failures, but it was like ER and the mental health part, not for me.
I would share though that there's classes that I struggled. And so here's the thing, if you are struggling or you feel like you're struggling, get resources. And then I got help, right? And sometimes we don't want to say that, or we say that we're struggling, but I did struggle and I got help. And I'll tell you this, I got my doctorate at Pitt, so I didn't do all of my undergrad at Pitt, right? Or even my master's at Pitt. But when I got into the DNP program, boy, that first semester was rough, right? Because, guess what? You're in the top schools in the country, you know what I mean? So there were things I had to get help on like to get really to what I would say is that awesome Pitt level, right, of education, you know what I mean? And so I had to get help, and it's okay. It is truly okay. That's what I would say. There were times I had to struggle, but I knew to utilize my resources, and no one thought any different of me. And the faculty helped me, right, to better understand the concepts.
I will say, to kind of piggyback on what Dondra said, I did actually, the way that my undergrad program was set up was that it was levels. So you had level 1 through 5. And I failed my level 2. And it was devastating. I thought, oh my God, like I don't have what it takes to, to be a nurse. And at first I thought I wasn't going to go back. I was like, well, maybe I'm just going to just do something different. But I did go back. And I did the remediation. And I think the key to that is asking for help. Like I struggled that whole semester, but I never said, I'm struggling, I need help. Can someone explain this to me in a way that I can understand? Because I clearly wasn't understanding. So that second time around, I made sure that I had regular office visits with my professor. I stayed in her office actually. Like she eventually just gave me her cell phone number. She's like, just call me because I'm going home. I got to drive an hour to get home and I'm not going to stay here all night with you, but we can talk, So that was very helpful. And then I was successful and went on to continue to be successful. And that was, I think, a really big lesson for me early on, is to make sure that you let your needs be known. Otherwise, how can people help you?
But Maddie, what Dondra and Letitia are saying, they had someone that they could go to. We have students of color and, African-American students. They don't have anyone that they can go to. And I think that's the good part about Pitt, that Pitt is viewed as being supportive up to students. So that's the difference. When you're in an environment that you don't have that support, you struggle, and often you are the person who is not retained.
Yeah, it goes back to the representation and mentorship and being comfortable. Like Dondra said, you need to have some people who you're comfortable with going to. Otherwise, you'll just be out in the cold. So yeah, except for Letitia, who's in New Orleans, and you're in the warmth. So I have one final question for you guys, which kind of ties into a little bit of mentorship. How can we encourage more young Black or people of color to become nurses or go into the field of nursing?
So I would say that we have to create an awareness, right? And so that means making sure that diverse individuals, and this isn't just diversity with race, it could be any diversity, have an awareness of nursing and what nursing has to offer as a career. And then the second part of that is readiness. And so many times it sometimes upsets me when people think that we have to get academic remediation and all of that for people of color to be a nurse. That's not what everybody needs, right? And so I think it needs to be individualized plans to help to assist people in what it might be to support them in being a nurse. I think that there was, as I shared with you years ago, there was the Nurse Recruitment Coalition who did a fabulous job, and I still talk to some of those individuals that we all came up through that initiative. But really, it's about creating that awareness and assessing that readiness to be a nurse and helping people to get there from various diverse opportunities, and creating that awareness young in age. We don't have to wait till you're ready to go to college, right? We need to be doing that way before then and creating that awareness.
I agree. I'm just going to say that, from my experience, I wish I had known earlier on, because I had the inclination to want to be in healthcare, but never really saw myself as a nurse, or I never saw a nurse that looked like me. So I didn't even think about it. It wasn't on my radar. So I think maybe starting reaching students early on to explain, and then sharing the range of what nurses can do. It's not just one thing. Nurses show up in a lot of spaces and do a lot of different things to influence health and global health.
So from a maternal health background, I agree with both Dondra and Letitia. I also think we need to involve parents. We need to talk to parents and their offspring about nursing. And as others have done for me, including the dean and other members of the faculty, We need to make sure that any nursing school, that door is open. And if the student and the parent is hesitant, we take those individuals by the hand and say, I'm going to walk with you through that door. So the next time you come to that door, you can walk through it by yourself. So I think that's what we have to do. We've tried to start out even with middle school students talking about, do you want to be a nurse midwife? In my own arena, 10% of the nurse midwives look like me. So I think we have to involve parents so that they understand, yes, your child can do that. And that is within the family itself. The mantra in my family was, if we can get the first one through, everybody else will follow. So, but that's my maternal health background. But I do believe that parents have to be involved in the discussion too.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you three for so very much for sharing your stories with us. They are so inspirational. You guys are absolutely amazing. And I'm so proud to be able to call you Pitt nursing alums. And I wanted to also thank Dean Dunbar Jacob for joining our call today. And also finally, a thank you to all of our registrants. We're so thankful that you were able to join us and make room for in your schedules on to join us today. I will be doing some follow-up emails with everyone. I know there was a question about the Future Nursing Academy, getting some more information about that. So I will be sharing some more information. But if there's any other additional questions, or if there's any other, if I can be of any assistance in any way, please feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your Thursdays, and hail to Pitt. Bye, everyone. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Maddie.